Dad threw me out at 13 because stepmom hated me. Now he wants me back. When I was 13, my stepmom Tracy convinced my dad I was stealing from her purse. She'd come home from work crying, saying money was missing again. "It's always when she's here," she'd tell my dad, pointing at me like I was some kind of criminal. I wasn't taking anything, I swear to God, but like, who's going to believe a 13-year-old over a sobbing adult? My dad sat me down with this disappointed look on his face and said, "You have to go live with your Aunt Mary until you learn to respect other people's property." I remember packing my stuff in garbage bags, crying and swearing I didn't take anything, but my dad just stood there watching, shaking his head like I was some lost cause. The way he looked at me, honestly, it was like he'd already given up. Living with Aunt Mary wasn't terrible, but it wasn't home, you know? For 5 years, my relationship with my dad was basically non-existent. He'd send awkward birthday cards and sometimes call on holidays, but we both knew things were broken between us, like really broken. I threw myself into school, made honor roll every semester, got into state college on partial scholarship. I built a life without him because I had to. Then last Tuesday, I got the weirdest call ever. It was Mrs. Callahan, my dad's next door neighbor. "Honey, I thought you should know. Your stepmom got arrested yesterday. FBI raided the house and everything." I was so confused. Arrested for what? Credit card fraud, identity theft, bunch of financial crimes. Been going on for years, apparently. Your poor father's been sleeping in his car since they seized the house. My first thought wasn't sympathy for my dad. It was this sick feeling in my stomach, like puzzle pieces clicking together. 2 days later, my dad calls me for the first time in 8 months. He's crying before he even says hello. "I found something," he said, his voice all shaky. Tracy had a whole folder on her computer called "Frame the Kid," screenshots of our bank statements, notes about when to blame you for missing money. She even recorded herself practicing crying in the bathroom mirror. The room started spinning. This woman had literally planned my exile like some twisted movie plot. She was stealing from us the whole time. My dad continued, taking cash, using our cards, even took out loans in my name. When the amounts got too big to hide, she'd blame you and I'd stop looking for the real problem. The FBI investigation revealed everything. Tracy had been running credit card scams for 3 years before she even met my dad. She'd specifically targeted him because he was a single father, someone isolated who'd believe her over his own kid. She'd stolen over $80,000 from my dad, destroyed his credit, and almost cost him his job when the fraud investigation reached his workplace. The house I grew up in, gone. His savings, gone. His relationship with his daughter, also gone. Yesterday, my dad showed up at my apartment unannounced. He looked terrible, honestly. Unshaven, wearing the same clothes from 3 days ago. Dark circles under his eyes that made him look like he'd aged 10 years. "I know I messed up," he said, standing in my doorway like a broken man. "But you're my blood. You're all I have left. Family forgives family, right?" I stared at him for a long moment. This man who'd chosen a criminal over his own daughter, who'd watched me pack my life into garbage bags and never questioned if he was making a mistake, who'd let me feel like a thief for 5 years. "You want to know what's funny?" I said, leaning against my doorframe. "For 5 years, I kept hoping you'd call and say you believed me, that you missed me, that you realized you were wrong. I used to practice what I'd say when you finally apologized." His face lit up like maybe this conversation was going in his favor. "But I don't need that anymore," I continued. "I built a life without you. You chose Tracy over me. Now live with that choice." Something shifted in his expression. The tears stopped. He stood up straighter, and I swear his eyes went cold. "Actually, I didn't come here to apologize." My chest tightened. "What? Tracy's in prison, yeah. But she's not stupid. She knew this might happen. So she gave me something before she got arrested. Insurance, she called it." He pulled this thick envelope from his jacket. "Everything about your life, your social security number, your bank accounts, your passwords, even your mother's grave location." His voice went flat and cold, like he wasn't even my dad anymore. "Tracy said if I couldn't convince you to help me, I should use these. And honestly, after everything I've lost, I think she was right." He opened the envelope, and I saw my entire life documented on paper. Bank statements, copies of my driver's license, even screenshots of my social media accounts. "You have 24 hours to decide. Either you let me move in with you and help me rebuild, or I make sure you lose everything too. Because if I'm going down, you're coming with me." The look in his eyes was nothing like my father. He'd become exactly like her. I slammed the door in his face so hard the whole frame shook. My hands were literally trembling as I fumbled for my phone. Aunt Mary picked up on the second ring. "He threatened me," I said, my voice shaking. "Mary, he actually threatened me with all my personal information." "Slow down, honey. What happened?" I told her everything. You know, the envelope, the ultimatum, the way his eyes went dead when he talked. When I finished, there was this long pause on the other end of the line. "Listen to me very carefully," Aunt Mary said, her voice suddenly sharp in a way I'd never heard before. "I need you to come over right now, and I mean right now. I have something you need to hear. 20 minutes later, I was sitting in her kitchen while she pulled out her phone. "I've been keeping these. I wasn't sure if you'd ever want to hear them, but now I think you need to." She played the first voicemail. It was my dad's voice from 3 years ago, and honestly, hearing it made my stomach turn. "Mary, I keep thinking maybe I was too harsh. Maybe Tracy was wrong about the money, but I can't admit that now, right? I'd look like an idiot." Another one from 2 years ago. "I saw her graduation announcement on Facebook. On a roll again. God, Mary, what if I made the biggest mistake of my life?" There were at least a dozen more, each one showing my dad knew he'd screwed up, but was too proud to fix it. I felt this weird mix of vindication and rage building in my chest. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, my voice cracking. "Because he never had the guts to call you himself," Mary said bitterly. "He'd call me, cry about his guilt, then do nothing, just wallowed in it. But that's not even the important part." She scrolled to a video file on her phone. "This is from your cousin's wedding last year. Tracy had too much wine at the reception." The video showed Tracy laughing with someone at a table. The audio was muffled at first, but then clear as day. Oh please, that brat was so easy to get rid of. Plant some evidence, cry a little, and boom. Problem solved. Best decision I ever made was getting rid of that little leech. My stomach dropped. I actually felt dizzy. "You had this the whole time?" "I recorded it because I knew something was off about her," Mary said. "But by the time I got it, you were already building your new life. I didn't want to drag you back into that mess. But now," she looked at me seriously, "now we use it." I spent the next hour with Mary going through every text, every voicemail, every piece of evidence she'd been quietly collecting. My dad knew. Maybe not at first, but he knew. And he chose to ignore it because admitting he was wrong was harder than losing his daughter. "What do I do with this?" I asked. "We get more," Mary said, her jaw set in determination. "If your dad wants to play dirty with that envelope, we need ammunition. Real ammunition." The next morning, I did something that felt absolutely crazy. I created a fake email account and sent a message to the prison where Tracy was being held. I posed as a legal assistant working on her case, requesting a phone call to discuss her sentencing. It took 2 days, but I got the call set up. I had my phone on speaker with a recording app running while Mary sat next to me, both of us barely breathing. Tracy's voice came through, sharp and annoyed. "Who is this again?" "I'm calling on behalf of your case," I said, trying to keep my voice professional and steady. "There are some inconsistencies in your statements we need to clarify." "Look, I already told the FBI everything. What more do you want? Specifically about your relationship with your stepdaughter and the financial planning you undertook." Tracy actually laughed, like a real laugh. "Oh, that was all part of the plan. See, when you're running scams, you need a scapegoat. The kid was perfect, young, emotional, easy to blame. Her dad was so desperate for a wife he believed anything I said. I had to physically stop myself from saying something." Mary grabbed my hand under the table. "And the documents you left for him?" "Insurance policy, sweetie. If he ever tried to turn on me, I made sure he'd have the tools to hurt someone else. Mutually assured destruction and all that. I even showed him where I kept copies of everything about the brat, just in case." My hand was shaking so hard, I almost dropped the phone. "So he knew about the blackmail materials?" "Knew. Honey, he helped me organize them. We spent an entire weekend going through her life documenting everything. He thought it was hilarious at the time. Said something like, 'At least if I go down, I'm taking her with me.'" The call lasted another 10 minutes. Tracy bragged about everything. The fake crying sessions, the planted evidence, even how she'd coach my dad on what to say to make me feel guilty. She talked about it like she was proud of it, like it was some kind of accomplishment. By the end, I had everything I needed. Every confession, every detail, every piece of proof that my dad wasn't just a victim, but an active participant. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about my dad helping Tracy compile that envelope, laughing about it, planning my destruction just in case he needed it someday. The man who was supposed to protect me had literally created a blueprint for ruining my life. The next morning, I decided to do something even crazier. I remembered my dad mentioned the storage unit where Tracy kept all her insurance files. He'd said it in passing during his threat, thinking I was too scared to act on it. At 2 a.m., Mary and I drove to the storage facility on the edge of town. It was one of those sketchy 24-hour places with barely any security. Mary stood lookout by the gate while I approached Unit 237, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I'd watched enough YouTube videos to know how to pick a cheap lock. My hands were sweating as I worked the lockpick, constantly looking over my shoulder. After about 10 minutes that felt like hours, it clicked open. Inside was worse than I imagined. There were boxes and boxes of files. But they weren't just about me. I opened the first box and found complete dossiers on 3 other families: the Johnsons, the Reeves family, and the Kowalskis. Each folder contained the same thing: social security numbers, bank records, photos, passwords, everything you'd need to destroy someone's life. "Oh my God," I whispered, pulling out my phone to take pictures of everything. Mary peeked in from her lookout position. "What is it?" "They weren't just scamming my dad. They did this to other people too. And look." I held up a document with my dad's handwriting, notes about the Reeves family, detailed plans about how to approach them. He wasn't a victim. He was working with her the whole time. We spent 2 hours in that storage unit, documenting everything, every file, every scheme, every victim. My dad had been part of this for at least 4 years, probably longer. They targeted single parents, widowers, people who were isolated and vulnerable, people just like my dad had pretended to be. I felt sick, like actually nauseous. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about all the lives they destroyed together. When we got back to Mary's house at 4 a.m., I couldn't even process what we'd found. But Mary was already making coffee and planning our next moves. "We need to go to the FBI," she said. "This is bigger than just your dad threatening you. He'll use that envelope against me before we can do anything," I said, my voice hollow. "Not if we move first." The next day, my dad showed up at my workplace. I worked at the campus library, shelving books and helping students with research. It was a quiet, peaceful job that I actually enjoyed. I saw him walk in during my shift, and my whole body went cold. He found me in the biography section, away from the main desk. "Time's up," he said quietly, his voice flat. "Have you made your decision?" "I need more time," I said, my voice barely steady. "No more time." He leaned against the bookshelf like we were having a casual conversation. "I already sent your social security number to 3 credit card companies this morning. Just testing the waters, you know? Unless you want me to really ruin you. You'll let me move into your apartment this weekend." This was it. The moment I'd been preparing for. I pulled out my phone and pressed play. Tracy's voice filled the aisle between the bookshelves. He helped me organize them. We spent an entire weekend going through her life, documenting everything. He thought it was hilarious at the time. My dad's face went completely white, like all the blood drained out in an instant. "Where did you get that?" "You're not the only one who can make insurance calls," I said, keeping my voice level even though my heart was pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. "I have everything, Dad. The storage unit, the other families, all of it." He lunged for my phone, but I'd already called campus security before he even arrived. 2 officers appeared at the end of the aisle like I'd planned. "This man is attempting to blackmail me," I said loudly, clearly, making sure everyone nearby could hear. "He's threatening to steal my identity if I don't let him move in with me." A small crowd of students and staff had gathered, drawn by the commotion. Some were recording on their phones. My dad's face turned from white to red as he realized what was happening. "You're lying," he tried to say, but his voice cracked. "I'm her father. She's just upset because you threw me out at 13 for a crime I didn't commit," I said, my voice getting louder, more confident. "Because you helped your criminal wife frame me, and now you're trying to destroy my life because yours fell apart?" The security officers took him by the arms. He tried to pull away, but they held firm. "Sir, you need to leave campus immediately." "She's lying. Sir, we have video of you threatening her. We need you to leave now or we'll arrest you for trespassing." As they escorted him out, my coworkers and the students who knew me started asking if I was okay. Some of them had heard parts of what happened, and word was already spreading. My supervisor, Dr. Chen, pulled me aside. She was this kind older woman who'd always been supportive. "Take the rest of the day off," she said gently. "And if you need anything, you let me know. We can arrange security to walk you to your car if you don't feel safe." I stood there shaking for a solid 5 minutes after he left. My coworker Jessica brought me water and made me sit down, but I'd done it, in front of witnesses, with recordings, with evidence. He couldn't claim I was making it up anymore. That night, I did something I'd been thinking about since I found those files. I drove to the prison and requested a face-to-face visit with Tracy. I don't know what I was expecting, but I needed to look her in the eye. I needed her to know I wasn't that scared 13-year-old anymore. They brought her out in an orange jumpsuit, looking way different than the polished woman who used to live in my house. Her hair was pulled back, no makeup, none of the careful presentation she always maintained. She sat down across from me with this smug smile. Well, the little thief finally comes to visit. I didn't rise to the bait. "I have a proposition," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I have recordings of you admitting to the fraud. I have evidence of other families you and my dad scammed together, and I'm willing to trade some of that information to the prosecutor if you testify against my dad." Her smile faded a bit. "You're bluffing." I pulled out my phone and played a clip. Her own voice. The kid was perfect. Young, emotional, easy to blame. Tracy's face hardened. All the smugness disappeared. "What do you want?" "I want you to tell the prosecutor everything. Every scheme, every victim. every detail of how you and my dad work together. In exchange, I'll provide evidence that might help with your sentencing. Why would you help me? I'm not helping you, I said. I'm helping all the people you two destroyed. And honestly, I want my dad to face what he did. All of it. Not just his part in your schemes, but what he did to me specifically. She leaned back in her chair, studying me with new interest. He said you were soft. Guess he was wrong about that too. So do we have a deal? Tracy nodded slowly. Yeah, we have a deal. But you should know something. She leaned forward, lowering her voice even though there was no one close enough to hear. Your dad? He was worse than me. I taught him the basics, sure, but he took to it like a natural. Half those schemes in that storage unit, those were his ideas. He just let me take the lead because it was safer that way. Less suspicious if the wife was the primary contact. My stomach turned. You're saying he was running the show? I'm saying he's been playing you this whole time. The sad dad act, the guilt, all performance. He was going to use that envelope on you whether you helped him or not. He just wanted to hurt someone the way he'd been hurt. That's who your father really is. I left the prison feeling numb. My dad wasn't just a weak man who made bad choices. He was an active participant in destroying lives, including mine. He'd planned it, enjoyed it. And when his world fell apart, his first instinct was to take me down with him. Over the next few days, I worked with Aunt Mary to organize everything we'd found. We made copies of all the files, organized them by victim, and prepared a comprehensive report. Mary had this old printer that we basically ran nonstop for 2 days straight, but my dad wasn't done. 3 nights later, I was staying at Aunt Mary's when my phone started blowing up with notifications. My apartment building's security system was sending alerts. Someone had broken into my apartment. We rushed over to find my door kicked in and my place absolutely trashed. Furniture overturned, cushions slashed, clothes everywhere. My laptop smashed on the floor. My dad had been looking for the recordings, destroying everything in his path. But here's the thing. I'd already moved everything to a cloud service and given copies to Aunt Mary. He destroyed my stuff for nothing, just pure rage and desperation. We need to call the police, Mary said, pulling out her phone. Wait, I said, looking around at the destruction. An idea was forming. Do you still have those cameras I bought for your house? The ones you never installed? Yeah, they're in my garage. Why? Because he's gonna come back. Guys like him always do. 2 hours later, we'd set up hidden cameras throughout my apartment. One in the bookshelf, one in a picture frame, one inside a stuffed animal on the dresser. All motion activated, all recording to the cloud. I knew he'd come back. I could feel it. Sure enough, the next night the cameras caught everything. My dad breaking in again through the same door he'd kicked in the first time. This time, he wasn't just looking for recordings. He went straight for my bedroom. For the lockbox I'd intentionally left in an easy-to-find spot under my bed, he stole my birth certificate, my social security card, and my passport. The cameras caught him holding them up to the light, checking to make sure they were real, then stuffing them in his jacket with this satisfied smile on his face. Got you, I whispered, watching the footage on my phone from Mary's house. But I didn't call the police yet. I had a better idea. Much better idea. I took all the footage, the break-ins, the theft, everything. I took all the recordings from Tracy, all the evidence Mary had collected over the years, and I made a video. Not a long one, just about 2 minutes, but it was devastating. It showed Tracy's confession, my dad breaking into my apartment twice, the files from the storage unit proving they'd scammed multiple families together, his threatening texts and emails, everything condensed into the most damning 2 minutes of his life. Then I posted it, not just on my social media, but on his. I'd gotten his passwords from that envelope he'd been so proud of showing me. I tagged every single person he was friends with, his brother, his sister-in-law, his former co-workers, old friends from high school, his bowling league, everyone. The caption was simple: "This is what a real thief looks like." I sat there with Mary, both of us watching the notifications roll in. Within the first hour, the video had hundreds of views. Within 2 hours, it was over 1,000. His family started commenting. His brother, "What the hell is this? Call me now." His sister-in-law, "We need to talk, this is insane." Old coworkers, "I knew something was off. Glad I never trusted you with that project." "You borrowed money from me, you piece of garbage." People from his past were coming out of the woodwork with stories. Someone commented about how he'd scammed them out of concert tickets in high school. Another person said he'd borrowed tools and never returned them. Years of small cons and manipulations, all surfacing now. My phone started ringing. It was my Uncle Greg, my dad's younger brother. "Is this real?" he asked without any greeting or preamble, every single word. Jesus Christ! There was a long pause. We had no idea. None of us knew what he was doing or what he did to you. My wife and I, we've been talking and we want to help. We have a guest house you can stay in. No rent, no strings attached. Just let us help fix this. Let us be the family we should have been 5 years ago. I started crying. I didn't even realize how much I'd been holding in until that moment. Really? Really? Family is supposed to protect each other, and we failed you. Your dad, he always had this way of explaining things that made sense at the time, you know? He told us you'd stolen from them, that you were troubled, that living with Mary was what you needed. We should have questioned it. We should have called you ourselves. We're so sorry. That conversation broke something open in me. The anger, the fear, the loneliness, all of it just came pouring out. Uncle Greg and his wife Diane spent 2 hours on the phone with me that night, listening to everything, every detail I'd been holding in. They cried with me. They apologized for not being there. They promised to do better. But my dad wasn't taking this quietly. The next day, he made good on his threat. He used my stolen identity, documents to try to drain my bank account, or at least he tried to. I'd already called my bank the day after he first threatened me. I'd moved everything to a new account under Aunt Mary's address, filed identity theft reports, and frozen my credit. Every single safeguard the bank advisor recommended, I'd done it all. When he tried to access my account, the bank flagged it immediately and called me. Ma'am, someone is attempting unauthorized access to your old account using your social security number. I know who it is, I said. It's my father. Save all the records. I'm pressing charges. The bank representative paused. We have video surveillance from an ATM showing someone attempting to use a card linked to your old account. Would you like us to send this to the authorities? Yes, absolutely. Please do that immediately. We'll also be filing our own report for attempted fraud. The individual will likely be contacted by law enforcement within 24 to 48 hours. That's when things started moving fast, really fast. The FBI agent handling Tracy's case called me that afternoon. Miss Hayes, we'd like to talk to you about the evidence you've been collecting regarding your father. I met with them the next day at their field office. 2 agents, a man and a woman, both looking serious as I walked in with 3 boxes of documentation. This is extensive. The male agent said, Agent Morrison, flipping through the files, you've essentially done half our job for us. We had no idea there were other victims. The female agent, Agent Park, added, Tracy's case was focused on what she did to your father. This opens up multiple new cases. What happens now? I asked. Now, we arrest your father, and we start reaching out to these other families. They deserve to know what happened to them and that they weren't alone. 2 days later, I tracked my dad down. I knew he was staying at the Sunset Motel on Highway 9, one of those sketchy weekly rate places. I found him in the parking lot, loading stuff into a car I didn't recognize. Probably stolen, knowing him. Going somewhere? I asked. He spun around, and the look on his face was pure, undiluted hate. You! He spat. You ruined everything. Everything I had, everything I built, gone because of you. No, Dad, you did that all by yourself. I held up a folder filled with printouts. FBI wants to talk to you and your former employer, and about 3 other families you destroyed. The Johnsons send their regards, by the way. They're very interested in seeing you in court. You don't have anything on me. I have everything on you. I stepped closer, looking him right in the eye without flinching. And here's the deal. You disappear. Completely. You never contact me again. You never use my name. You never even think about me. And in exchange, I won't send all of this to your former employer, who's very interested in why their fraud investigation keeps circling back to you. His jaw clenched. I could see the muscles working, his fists balling up. You can't do this to me. I already did. The FBI has copies. Your brother has copies? Hell, the entire internet has copies. You're done. Finished. The only question is whether you spend the next few years in prison or on the run. But either way, you're out of my life. I'll tell them you're lying. I'll say you fabricated all of this, that you're doing to me what Tracy did. With what proof? Your word against recordings, video evidence, and Tracy's testimony? I laughed, and it felt good. It felt really, really good. You're finished. The only choice you have left is how much worse you want to make it for yourself. He took a step toward me, and for a second I thought he might actually try to hit me. But then a car pulled into the lot. Uncle Greg got out, along with another man I didn't recognize. Everything okay here? Greg called out, walking over. My dad looked between us, realizing he was outnumbered and probably being recorded. This isn't over, he said, but his voice had lost its edge. He sounded pathetic. Yeah, it is, I said. Goodbye, Dad. As he drove away in his stolen car, Uncle Greg put his hand on my shoulder. You did good, kid. Really good. The man with Greg introduced himself as his lawyer friend. I've been documenting everything from the car, he said, holding up his phone. If he tries anything else, we have it all on record. But my dad had one last card to play, one last manipulation attempt. That night, I got an email from him. The subject line was just, "Goodbye." The message was long and rambling. He said he was going to kill himself and it was all my fault. How I destroyed his life, taken everything from him, turned his own family against him. On and on about how I was a terrible daughter and he wished he'd never had me. How he hoped I could live with the guilt of his death on my conscience. For about 5 seconds, I felt this jolt of panic. That old instinct to be the good daughter, to fix things, to take care of him. But then I remembered everything he'd done. The years of abandonment, the lies, the schemes, the blackmail, the break-ins, the identity theft, the other families he'd destroyed, the fact that he'd helped Tracy plan my exile and thought it was funny. I forwarded the email to Uncle Greg with a simple message. He's trying to manipulate me one last time. What do I do? Uncle Greg called immediately. Don't fall for it. I've seen him pull this exact stunt before. When our mom cut him off financially after he stole from her, he sent her the same kind of message. She panicked and gave him $5,000. 2 days later, he was fine and asking for more money. It's emotional terrorism. What should I do? Forward me his location from the email metadata. If he's actually in danger, I'll call for a welfare check. But I'm betting he's just trying to guilt you into backing off. I sent the location information. Uncle Greg called the police for a wellness check, then called his sister and a few of my dad's old friends. Within an hour, they'd gone to the motel and staged an intervention. Uncle Greg sent me a photo later. My dad, sitting in the motel room surrounded by family members, looking more angry than suicidal. His face was red, his arms crossed, looking like a kid who got caught lying. "He's fine," Greg texted, "just pissed that nobody bought his act this time. We're cutting him off financially and emotionally until he gets real psychiatric help. No more enabling, no more excuses. He either gets help or he's on his own." The email stunt was his last real attempt to control the narrative. After that, he went quiet, but I wasn't done. 3 days later, something happened that made my blood run cold. He showed up on my college campus again. I was walking to my economics class, carrying my textbook and coffee, when I spotted him. He was sitting in the back row of the lecture hall, just sitting there, not doing anything, not saying anything, just watching me with this creepy smile, like he was trying to intimidate me just by being there. Like he was saying, "You can't escape me." I walked straight out and went directly to the dean's office. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold my coffee cup. "I need to file a formal complaint against someone for stalking and harassment," I told the receptionist. I spent 2 hours with the dean and campus security, showing them everything. The videos, the recordings, the break-ins, the blackmail attempts, the threatening email, and now this. All of it laid out in chronological order. The dean was this older woman named Dr. Winters, and she did not mess around. She'd been dean for like 20 years and had seen everything. "We take student safety very seriously," she said, her face stern. "I'm issuing an immediate trespass order. If he sets foot on campus again, he'll be arrested. No warnings, no second chances." She personally walked down to my economics class with 2 security officers. They removed my dad from the lecture hall while every student watched. Dr. Winters made a point of announcing loudly why he was being removed. "This individual has been stalking and harassing one of our students. He is banned from campus effective immediately. If anyone sees him on campus property, contact security immediately." My dad tried to argue, saying he had a right to be there, that it was a public university. But the security officers literally dragged him out. The other students looked at me with this mix of sympathy and respect. After class, a few people came up to me. "That was your dad?" one girl asked. "That's absolutely insane. I'm so sorry you're dealing with this." "Are you okay?" another student asked. "That must have been terrifying. If you need someone to walk you to your car or anything, let us know. We've got your back," a guy from my study group said. Seriously, for the first time in weeks, I felt like people actually saw what was happening. Not just Mary or Uncle Greg, but strangers who witnessed my dad's behavior and recognized it for what it was. Stalking, harassment, abuse. That feeling of being believed, of being supported, it was overwhelming in the best way. That night, I made my final move. I went back to the storage unit with Aunt Mary one last time. We emptied the entire thing. Every box, every file, every piece of evidence that had documented years of crimes. We loaded it all into Mary's truck. It took 3 trips to get everything. The unit was completely empty when we were done. We drove to Mary's house and out to her backyard. We built a fire pit using some old bricks she had in her garage. "You sure about this?" Mary asked, holding a lighter. "The stuff about me? Yeah, I'm burning it. But the files about the other families, I separated those into a different pile. These I'm sending anonymously to each family. They deserve to know what happened to them. They deserve justice, too. We spent hours that night feeding documents into the fire. My social security card copies, my bank statements, photos of me as a kid, everything Tracy and my dad had collected to use against me, to hold over my head, to control me with. It all turned to ash. There was something almost ceremonial about it. Each paper that burned felt like another piece of their power over me disappearing. When it was done, Mary and I sat by the fire with hot chocolate, watching the last embers die down. It was probably 2 a.m. by then. "You did it," she said softly. "You really did it. You took your life back." "I did," I said, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could actually breathe, like there wasn't this constant weight on my chest. The next week, I sent anonymous packages to the Johnson family, the Reeves family, and the Kowalskis. Each package contained copies of the files from the storage unit, along with a detailed note explaining what had happened to them, who was responsible, and how to contact the FBI about their case. I didn't include my name. I didn't need credit or thanks. I just needed them to know the truth. 2 of the families called the FBI tip line within days. One family, the Reeves, called Uncle Greg directly after recognizing his address on some of the documents. My dad's world was collapsing piece by piece, and I was the one holding the sledgehammer. I blocked his number, blocked his email, blocked every social media account he had or might have. I blocked anyone who might serve as a go-between. I even blocked some distant cousins I barely knew, just in case he tried to use them to reach me. Uncle Greg and Aunt Diane helped me move into their guest house the following weekend. It was small but perfect. My own space, my own life, completely separate from anything my dad could touch. They didn't charge me rent, just asked that I help with groceries and keep the place clean. They treated me like family, real family, the kind that shows up and means it. My scholarship was intact, my credit was frozen and protected, my identity was secure. The FBI had enough evidence to prosecute both my dad and Tracy for multiple counts of fraud, identity theft, conspiracy, and a bunch of other charges I didn't fully understand. I'd won. Not just survived, but actually won. The last thing I did was change my phone number and my email address. I didn't tell my dad the new ones. I didn't tell anyone except the people I trusted. I didn't leave a forwarding address. I just disappeared from his life the same way he'd made me disappear from mine when I was 13. Make sure to click on the screen to watch other stories.